The trading post reeked of sweat, stale whiskey, and the acrid burn of a half-dead fire. Ella Morgan tightened her grip on the rifle slung over her shoulder as she stepped inside. The wooden floor groaned beneath her boots, and the noise inside barely faltered. Rough voices trading rumors, tin mugs clinking, the occasional scrape of a chair against the floor. She ignored the eyes that turned her way. Men who had seen too many miles, too many fights. Ella wasn't the first young woman to pass through these parts alone, but she knew well enough what they thought when they saw her. A stray, something to be claimed or cast aside. Old Walter stood behind the counter, his weathered face breaking into something like a smile when he spotted her. He had been her guardian, if he could be called that, ever since her family had been slaughtered by outlaws 5 years ago. A fur trader, a drifter, but the only person left in the world she trusted. "About time you got back," Walter grumbled, pushing a small burlap sack toward her. "That should last you a week. More if you don't go wasting it." Ella exhaled, nodding as she took the provisions. "I got the pelts," she murmured, slipping a bundle onto the counter. She'd trapped them herself, skinned them with numb fingers under the biting wind of the prairie. Walter grunted his approval. "Good work." A sudden hush rippled through the room. The door swung open behind her. Ella didn't need to turn, and no trouble had walked in. The air shifted. A chair scraped back. Boots thudded against the floor. The conversation, once easy and careless, became something else, tight, waiting. "Walter." The voice was low, rough, soaked in whiskey and dust. Ella turned her head slightly, just enough to see the man who had spoken. His eyes were cold, his beard patchy, his belt heavy with a pistol and a hunting knife. She recognized him. Clayton Tate, leader of the gang that had torn through these lands, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Walter didn't flinch. "What do you want, Clayton?" Tate grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "Heard you've been holding on to something that don't belong to you." His gaze flicked to Ella. The tension in the room turned suffocating. Walter shifted, placing a hand on the counter between them. "You ain't got no business with the girl." Clayton chuckled, glancing at his men, 3 of them, all armed. "That's so." His fingers toyed with the handle of his gun. "See, I heard otherwise. Heard she's got herself a debt to settle. Family owed me, and when they couldn't pay, well, seems to me the debt don't just disappear." Ella's pulse roared in her ears. Walter's voice turned hard as iron. "You're not talking her." Clayton's smile vanished. The room froze. And then the gunshot. Walter staggered, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. His body struck the floorboards with a sickening thud. Ella couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world narrowed to the pistol in Clayton's hand, still smoking, and the growing pool of blood beneath the only man who had ever given a damn about her. Someone shouted. The outlaws surged forward. Ella didn't wait. Her body moved before her mind caught up, shoving past the nearest man and diving for the door. A hand snatched at her arm. She swung the rifle hard, cracking the stock against bone. A curse, the grip loosening. She tore free. The cold night air slapped her as she burst outside. Her breath came fast, her heartbeat pounding like war drums. The outlaws weren't far behind. A horse. She needed a horse. Her eyes darted wildly. The nearest one, half-saddled, stamped its hooves near the hitching post. She lunged, scrambling onto its back. Hands fumbled for the reins. Shouts behind her. A second shot rang out, with splintered inches from her leg. She dug her heels into the horse's sides. It bolted, hooves striking the dirt in a frenzy of motion. The trading post disappeared behind her, swallowed by the night. The wind cut against her skin, her fingers stiffening as she clutched the reins. The terrain stretched out ahead. Rolling hills, scattered trees, the faint glimmer of a river in the distance. Nowhere to hide. Walter was dead. The realization hit like a kick to the ribs. Her breath hitched, but she shoved the grief down. Survival first. Grieve later. The sky stretched endless above her, stars burning cold and distant. Every shadow felt like a threat. She rode until the horse slowed, breath heaving, sides lathered in sweat. The river wasn't far now. Dismounting, she led the horse forward, her legs trembling. The water shimmered, black as ink, reflecting the night sky. She knelt at the edge, scooping a handful into her mouth. It was freezing, burning down her throat, but she didn't care. A rustle, a branch snapping. Ella's hand flew to her rifle. She wasn't alone. The movement came from the trees beyond the riverbank. Slow, deliberate. Not an animal. A man. Her heart pounded. She leveled the rifle, aiming into the darkness. "Show yourself." Silence. Then a figure emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark cloak. His face, partially lit by the moon, was striking. High cheekbones, sharp eyes. The braids in his dark hair and the markings on his skin told her what he was before he even spoke. Cheyenne. Akachita. His gaze flickered to the rifle pointed at him, but he didn't move. He looked her over, assessing, calculating. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was low, edged with quiet authority. Ella swallowed, her grip tightening. "Neither should you." He was wounded. She saw it now. A dark stain spreading across his side, barely visible against his clothing. He was hiding, just like her. A standoff, neither willing to trust the other. Then, voices carried in the distance. The outlaws. Searching. Akachita's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. "They hunt you." Ella exhaled, her muscles locking with tension. She nodded. A flicker of something crossed his face, understanding, maybe. He glanced toward the sound, then back at her. "You want to live?" he asked. Ella hesitated. This man was dangerous, but so was the world behind her. Her answer came in the way she lowered the rifle. Akachita turned without another word, stepping back into the shadows. Ella followed. The wilderness swallowed them whole, a vast and merciless expanse stretching in every direction. The moonlight barely reached through the thick canopy as Ella followed Akachita, each step cautious, every breath measured. The night held its own dangers, but nothing compared to the men hunting them. The outlaws would not give up. She knew that much. Akachita moved like a shadow, silent and sure-footed, as if the earth itself welcomed him. Ella struggled to match his pace, her boots snapping twigs and crunching dried leaves. He glanced back once, his sharp gaze cutting through the darkness, wordlessly telling her to be quieter. Frustration burned in her, but she swallowed it. He was keeping her alive. For now, the scent of damp earth and pine filled the air. The river roared somewhere in the distance, an unrelenting force cutting through the land. They needed to cross it before the outlaws caught up. The thought sent a chill through her bones. Akachita came to an abrupt stop, lifting a hand. Ella froze. The silence pressed in around them. Then she heard it too, the snap of a branch, distant voices. The outlaws were near. Her pulse thundered. She turned her head slowly, scanning the darkness. They couldn't run. Not yet. Any movement would give them away. Akachita crouched low, his fingers curling around the hilt of his knife. Ella tightened her grip on her rifle, the cold metal biting into her palm. A figure passed between the trees, little more than a dark silhouette against the dim moonlight. Another followed, for maybe 5 of them, moving with the careless confidence of men who believed they had already won. Akachita motioned for her to stay low as he eased backward, guiding them deeper into the undergrowth. They moved inch by inch, silent, deliberate. A single mistake would mean death. A loud curse rang out behind them. One of the outlaws had tripped over something in the dark. Laughter followed, rough and mocking. Ella dared to glance back. The men weren't worried. They weren't rushing. They thought she and Akachita had nowhere to go. They weren't entirely wrong. When the sounds faded, Akachita rose and motioned for her to follow. The river was close now, its distant rush turning into a deafening roar. The water would erase their tracks, but crossing it would be another battle. Ella's breath hitched when she saw the current. Fast, churning, merciless. The moon's reflection wavered across the surface, a deceptive illusion of calm. One wrong step, and the river would take her just as surely as any bullet. Akachita studied it for only a moment before stepping in. The water swallowed his legs instantly. He turned, holding out a hand. She hesitated. His dark eyes locked onto hers. Move. Ella inhaled sharply and followed. The cold punched through her body like a knife. She gasped, the air stolen from her lungs as the water surged around her waist, threatening to drag her down. The current pulled at her, testing her balance. Akachita didn't falter, guiding her with steady determination. Halfway across, she lost her footing. The river seized her. Panic exploded in her chest as she was yanked under, the world turning black and furious. She fought, kicking, clawing, but the current was relentless. Then hands, strong, unyielding, grasped her arm. Akachita, with a sharp pull, he wrenched her upward, back into the icy air. She coughed, gasping for breath, her body trembling. His grip tightened. Hold on. His voice was steady, a stark contrast to the chaos around them. She clung to his arm as they fought the last few steps, finally reaching the opposite bank. She collapsed on a solid ground, shivering, her fingers digging into the dirt as if afraid the river would reclaim her. Akachita crouched beside her, his breathing only slightly heavier than before. She turned her head toward him. You saved me. The words felt foreign on her tongue. His expression was unreadable. You would have done the same. She wasn't sure she believed that. Not yet. They couldn't stay. The outlaws would reach the river soon, and if they saw footprints leading into the water, they'd know exactly what had happened. With stiff limbs, Ella forced herself up and followed Akachita into the darkness once more. The night passed in restless silence. When dawn finally broke, it brought no warmth. The world was painted in dull grays, the sky thick with clouds. Somewhere far behind them, the outlaws still searched, their presence a weight on Ella's chest that refused to lift. They found a temporary shelter beneath the exposed roots of an ancient tree, its gnarled limbs stretching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. Akachita crouched beside a small fire, his movements precise as he cleaned a shallow wound on his side. Ella sat a few feet away, her back against the rough bark. Exhaustion gnawed at her, but sleep refused to come. She watched Akachita carefully. He had barely spoken since the river. She knew next to nothing about him, only that he fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. Finally, she broke the silence. Why are they hunting you? His hands stilled. He didn't look up. They burned my village. Kill my people. The words were spoken without emotion, but Ella heard what lay beneath them. She knew loss when she saw it. Something twisted inside her. A painful recognition. I'm sorry. Akachita glanced at her then, his dark eyes sharp, searching. And you? She looked away. The answer sat heavy on her tongue. They kill my family. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, Akachita nodded, as if some silent understanding had been reached. The fire crackled between them, filling the space where words had failed. They ate what little they had, dried meat and stale bread. It wasn't enough, but it would have to be. By midday, the sky darkened. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low growl of warning. A storm was coming. They moved quickly, knowing the rain would wash away any remaining tracks. But it would also slow them down. The ground turned soft beneath their feet, sucking at their boots. The wind carried the scent of wet earth, thick and cloying. As they climbed a steep ridge, Akachita stopped suddenly. Ella nearly ran into him. What? He lifted a hand, silencing her. Then she heard it. A low growl. Deep, menacing. The air went still. Ella turned her head slowly, every muscle in her body locking into place. Not far from them, just beyond the trees, stood a mountain lion. Its golden eyes burned with hunger. Its muscles coiled, ready to spring. Ella tightened her grip on her rifle. Akachita didn't reach for his weapon. Instead, he held out his arms slightly, making himself appear larger. The mountain lion watched them, tail flicking. A silent challenge. Ella's heart pounded. If she fired, the sound would carry. The outlaws would hear. But if she didn't, the beast took a step forward. Akachita moved first. With slow, deliberate steps, he shifted his weight, his gaze never leaving the animals. The tension thickened, the air suffocating. Then, without warning, he let out a sharp, guttural shout. The sound startled the mountain lion, its ears flattening. It hesitated. Akachita took another step. Another. The beast growled but didn't attack. Its tail twitched, and then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it turned and slinked back into the trees. Ella exhaled sharply, her hands shaking. Akachita glanced at her. Always face them. Never run. She swallowed hard. I'll try to remember that. The moment passed, but the tension remained. They had survived the river, the wild, the beast, but the true danger still waited for them in the distance. And it was closing in. The air felt different now. Thicker, weighted with something unseen yet undeniable. The outlaws were closing in. Ella could feel it in her bones, in the way Akachita's eyes flicked to the horizon with increasing frequency. Their brief moments of rest had become shorter, their movements more deliberate. There was no more time for hesitation. The chase was reaching its end. The morning was pale and gray when they spotted the cabin. It stood crooked against the backdrop of a dying forest, its roof sagging, the door hanging slightly ajar. The scent of rain still lingered in the air, clinging to the damp wood and the cold earth beneath their boots. Ella hesitated. Any shelter could be a trap. Akachita studied it in silence before nodding once. We look inside. He moved first, his steps light, measured. Ella followed, rifle in hand, her pulse steady but alert. She had learned to move like him now, to listen to the silence between each sound, to read the language of the wild as he did. The cabin was empty. Dust floated in the slanted light that filtered through the broken shutters. A table stood in the center of the room, one chair missing a leg, its twin lying abandoned in the corner. A faded quilt remained on the cot, its edges frayed. Someone had lived here once. Ella ran a hand over the rough wood of the table, her fingers tracing old knife marks. This place had been a home. Now, it was nothing more than a relic of a life long gone. Akachita crouched near the fireplace, running his fingers through the ash. Cold. No one here for days. Relief mixed with unease. They could rest, but not for long. She leaned her rifle against the table and lowered herself onto the cot. Her body ached, her limbs heavy from days of running. Akachita remained by the door, his back straight, his gaze sharp. Even now, he refused to let his guard down. "You should sleep," she murmured. He shook his head. "Not yet." Silence stretched between them. It wasn't uncomfortable anymore. The distance that had once separated them had lessened. They still carried their own burdens, their own grief, but something unspoken had begun to settle between them. An understanding. A gust of wind rattled the shutters. Ella closed her eyes for only a moment. Then, a creak. Not from the wind. She tensed, her hand reaching instinctively for the rifle beside her. Akachita had already moved, pressing himself against the wall near the door. His fingers curled around his knife, muscles taut. Another step, then the door swung open. The figure that stepped inside was not an outlaw. Not yet. He was older, his hair streaked with gray, his coat torn and mud-stained. A pistol hung at his hip, though he hadn't drawn it. His eyes flicked from Akachita to Ella, calculating. "Well now," the man said, voice rough with years of hard living. "Ain't often I find company in a place like this." Ella stayed silent, her grip tightening on the rifle. Akachita did not move. The man stepped further in, shaking off the rain. "I ain't looking for trouble." He glanced at Akachita. "But something tells me you two already found it." A beat passed. Then Akachita spoke. "Who are you?" The man's lips twisted in a humorless smile. "Name's Turner. Some call me a bounty hunter. Others call me worse." He exhaled, stepping closer. "And I've been tracking some real mean bastards through these parts." Ella's throat tightened. "The outlaws." Turner nodded. "They're not far. Maybe a day behind." His gaze lingered on her a moment longer. "And something tells me you already knew that." Akachita remained still, his body a coil of restrained energy. "What do you want?" Turner let out a slow breath. "I want what you want. Those men dead." Ella studied him, searching for deception in the hard lines of his face. She found none, but that didn't mean she trusted him. "They're planning a raid," Turner continued, voice low. "Big one. Gonna burn what's left of a Cheyenne settlement up near the river. Akachita's breath hitched. It was barely noticeable, but Ella saw it, felt the shift in the air. Turner leaned against the table, his hand resting near his pistol, but not on it. We don't stop them now. There won't be nothing left. Akachita's fists clenched at his sides. Ella could see it. The storm rising behind his calm exterior, the weight of unspoken grief pressing against him like a tide waiting to break. She took a step closer. You know where they'll be? Turner nodded. I can take you to him. He paused. But I ain't doing this for free. Ella's stomach turned. Of course. What do you want? His eyes darkened. Clayton Tate. Alive. Akachita stiffened. No. Turner sighed. Listen, kid, I know what he's done, but there's a price on his head, and I mean to collect it. Ella swallowed hard. The thought of Tate breathing after everything he had taken from them made her blood run cold. But Turner had something they didn't. Information. Akachita shook his head, his voice quiet but firm. He dies. Turner exhaled through his nose, considering. Then he nodded once. Fine, but I get his body. Ella looked between them. The deal had been made, silent and grim. Akachita turned to her. We leave now. They moved swiftly, following Turner's lead. The rain had begun again, a slow drizzle soaking through their clothes, turning the ground into thick mud. By nightfall, they reached the ridge overlooking the outlaw camp. Smoke curled into the sky from a dozen small fires. The men below were unaware, their laughter carrying through the valley. Ella's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment they had been running toward. Akachita crouched beside her, his gaze locked on the camp below. There was no hesitation in his eyes, only purpose. Turner drew his pistol, checking the chamber. We go at dawn. Ella swallowed against the knot in her throat. She had been running for so long. But now, there was nowhere left to run. Dawn would bring blood, one way or another. The first light of dawn crept over the ridge, casting the outlaw camp in hues of gray and gold. Smoke curled lazily from dying fires, the scent of burnt wood thick in the cold morning air. The men below were stirring, stretching from sleep, unaware that death was coming for them. Ella steadied her breath. The rifle felt heavier in her hands than it ever had before. This was different. This wasn't just survival. This was vengeance. Akachita knelt beside her, his face carved from stone. He had painted his skin with the earth, streaks of dark mud across his cheekbones, his arms. A warrior preparing for battle. There was no fear in his eyes, only resolve. Turner adjusted the sights on his pistol, muttering under his breath. We going fast, quiet as we can, but it won't stay quiet for long. Akachita's grip tightened around the knife at his waist. We don't leave any of them standing. Ella swallowed. The weight of those words settled deep in her chest. No hesitation, no mercy. A silent nod passed between them, and then they moved. The first outlaw never saw Akachita coming. One fluid motion, silent, precise, the blade slipped beneath his ribs before he could shout. His body crumpled into the dirt. Ella's hands shook, but she forced herself forward. There was no turning back now. Turner took down the next man with a quiet shot to the head, the muffled crack of his pistol lost in the morning stillness. Two down. Ella pressed against the side of a wagon, her breath shallow, heart pounding in her ears. A man stirred near the fire, rubbing his eyes, reaching for his rifle. She exhaled, aimed. The shot rang out, louder than she expected, echoing across the camp. The outlaw jerked backward, blood spraying across the embers. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, shouts. Chaos. The camp exploded into motion. Akachita was already moving, weaving between tents and bodies, his blade flashing. Turner fired, reloaded, fired again, cursing as men scrambled for their weapons. Ella pressed her back to the wagon, hands slick with sweat, breath coming fast and ragged. She had hit her mark, but there was no time to think about it. A shadow loomed. She spun, rifle raised, but the outlaw was faster. He slammed into her, knocking the weapon from her grasp. The ground hit hard, the wind driven from her lungs. His weight pinned her down, his breath hot and rancid against her skin. She fought, clawed at his face, reached blindly for anything. Her fingers closed around a rock. She swung. The sickening crunch of bone. The outlaw howled, rolling off her. She scrambled up, grabbed her rifle, and fired. He stopped moving. Her breaths came in sharp, uneven gulps. Akecheta was fighting two men at once, his movements fluid, brutal. One fell, gurgling, clutching his throat. The other lunged. Ella raised her rifle, but Akecheta didn't need her help. With a swift motion, he grabbed the man's wrist, twisted, drove his knife deep into the outlaw's gut. He shoved the body away and met her gaze across the camp. Blood streaked his arms, his chest rising and falling with exertion. He nodded once. She nodded back. More gunfire. Turner had taken cover behind a stack of barrels, picking off outlaws one by one. And then a voice rang out, louder than the gunfire, louder than the chaos. Enough! Clayton Tate. He stood at the far end of the camp, his pistol pressed against the temple of a terrified boy, one of the few survivors from Akecheta's village. The battlefield froze. Ella's breath hitched. The child couldn't have been more than 10. His face was streaked with dirt, wide eyes darting between them. Tate's grip was firm, his mouth twisted into a mocking sneer. Drop your weapons, or I put a hole in his skull. Akecheta didn't move. Tate pressed the gun harder against the boy's head. I mean it, Turner cursed under his breath. Ella's hands trembled around the rifle. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Akecheta took a slow step forward. His voice was calm, too calm. Let him go. Tate laughed. Oh, I don't think so. His eyes flicked to Ella. You've caused me a hell of a lot of trouble, girl. I should have put you down the moment I saw you. Her stomach churned. She hated the way he looked at her, the way his voice slithered through the air like a snake coiling around her throat. Akecheta took another step. You won't leave here alive. Tate's grin widened. Maybe not, but neither will he. Ella saw it before anyone else did. The boy moved. His small hand darted toward Tate's belt, fingers closing around the handle of the knife there. Tate realized a second too late. The blade plunged into his side. He shouted, jerking back, his gun hand wavering for just a fraction of a second. Akecheta was on him. A blur of motion, the crack of bones, the sharp, wet sound of steel meeting flesh. Tate gasped, his body stiffening. Akecheta held him there, the knife buried deep in his chest, his face expressionless as he watched the life drain from the outlaw's eyes. Tate gurgled something incoherent, then sagged. Akecheta let him fall. Silence. The boy stumbled back, his chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. Ella ran to him, dropping to her knees, gripping his arms. You're all right, she whispered. You're all right. His lip trembled, but he nodded. Akecheta stood over Tate's body, unmoving. Turner exhaled, spinning his pistol before holstering it. Well, he muttered. That's that. Ella turned to Akecheta. His shoulders were tight, his face unreadable. She reached for him without thinking, her fingers brushing against his wrist. He looked at her. For the first time, she saw past the warrior, past the vengeance. She saw the man, the one who had lost everything, the one who had fought for something more, the one who had saved her. The wind carried the scent of blood and ash, but it wasn't the stench of death that filled her lungs. It was something else, something like freedom. The battle was over, but the war was never truly done. Akecheta lifted his head, staring out across the land. Ella followed his gaze. Somewhere beyond the hills, beyond the rivers, beyond the ghosts that still lingered in their shadows, there was something waiting for them. Not revenge, not survival, something more. She let out a slow breath. For the first time in years, she felt like she was finally moving toward it.